didn't come here for peace. Not at first. You came here to survive, to make sense of the noise, to control the chaos before it consumed you. And somewhere along the way, they told you that peace was the answer. So you searched for it, desperately, blindly. You tried to find peace in silence, in people, in absence, in approval. But it kept slipping through your fingers, didn't it? Because no one told you the truth. Peace isn't something you find. It's what remains when you stop trying to escape yourself. You kept thinking that if you did everything right, if you healed enough, changed enough, if you learned to say the perfect words in the perfect tone, then maybe they'd love you. Maybe the world would stop hurting. But the world never changed. Only you did. And that's the secret no one told you. Peace doesn't come from the outside in. It grows from the inside out after the war inside you has finally burned through every lie you ever told yourself. You wanted peace? Then you had to let everything fall apart first. You had to stop running, stop blaming, stop begging. You had to sit with every version of yourself you tried to silence. You had to hold the child that was abandoned. You had to listen to the parts of you that still tremble when someone raises their voice. And you had to do it without an audience. Because real peace isn't loud. It doesn't scream. It doesn't need to be seen. It's the quiet that comes after you've looked at your pain and said, I won't run from you anymore. Carl Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. You thought the goal was happiness, but the goal was integration. The goal was wholeness. You wanted peace? You had to lose the parts of you that needed chaos to feel alive. You had to say goodbye to people who fed on your wounds. You had to stop showing up for battles that were never yours. And that's when the world started to shift. Not because the noise stopped, but because it stopped owning you. You stopped reacting. You started observing. You stopped needing validation. You started living in alignment. You became untouchable the moment you stopped negotiating your worth. And no one applauded. No one noticed. Because peace doesn't perform. It simply exists. And in that existence, it speaks volumes. You became the calm you were begging the world to become. And now nothing moves you like it used to. Because you finally remembered who you were before the world told you what you had to be.
It's hard to explain what it feels like to live on constant alert when your nervous system has learned that safety is temporary, that peace is conditional, and that even the quietest moments might be just a pause before the next disruption. You don't trust silence because you've seen what comes after it. You don't fully rest because your body believes it might not be safe to. And so you tighten, you prepare, you anticipate, you armor yourself, not because you're paranoid, but because your experience taught you that being unguarded could cost you everything. But no one sees this. On the surface, you function, you show up, you smile. You answer emails, you check the boxes. But underneath that, there's a storm constantly being contained, a war waged quietly inside your skin. That war has shaped you in ways you can't explain. Carl Jung wrote that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And this silent preparation, this instinct to brace yourself is not your fate. It's your conditioning. It's the response your body crafted to survive environments that were never meant for you. And so, here you are, carrying the weight of other people's chaos, the unprocessed grief of your bloodline, the burdens passed down like heirlooms wrapped in silence and shame. You didn't ask for them, but you carry them. That's the strange paradox of being someone who sees too much. You become the keeper of invisible things. The truths no one wants to admit. The feelings no one wants to name. The questions no one wants to ask. And yet, somehow, you never turned cold. Despite the betrayals, despite the loneliness, despite the moments that nearly broke you, you never lost your capacity to feel. You're still here, aren't you? Still wondering, still trying, still hoping that maybe one day something will shift, that all the pieces you've been collecting, every heartbreak, every awakening, every silent cry, will mean something. This hope you carry isn't weakness, it's your soul's resistance to extinction. And deep down, a part of you already knows this. No external validation will save you. No apology will reverse the damage. No recognition will make it make sense. Because the real healing doesn't come from the outside. It doesn't come from revenge or justice or someone finally admitting they were wrong. It comes from choosing to face the mirror, to sit with the parts of yourself you once avoided, to look your pain in the eye and no longer flinch. Not because the pain is gone, but because you've grown larger than it. You stop being afflicted when you stop being divided, when you stop running from yourself, when you stop betraying your truth just to belong. You heal, not by forgetting, but by remembering who you were before you were told who to be. You take your power back, not by controlling everything, but by surrendering to what is true, even when it hurts, especially then. And slowly, you stop apologizing for how deeply you feel. You stop explaining your intuition. You stop shrinking to fit. You stop blaming yourself for the ways you learned to survive. You begin to walk with yourself, not against yourself. You no longer chase peace in other people's approval. You no longer beg to be seen by those who only look for reflections of themselves. You no longer contort your soul just to be chosen. Instead, you become the one who chooses. You choose stillness over noise. You choose self-respect over temporary validation. You choose alignment over performance. You choose the truth over comfort. And that truth may be this: you're not broken, you're burdened. You're not failing, you're feeling. You're not too much, you've simply outgrown what no longer holds your truth. Let that truth make you brave. Let it break you open and rebuild you. Let it remind you that the life you want isn't found in becoming someone else. It's found in reclaiming the parts of you you once buried to survive. Because that version of you, the one who knows how to feel it all and keep standing, the one who sees through illusion and still chooses love, that's the strongest kind of human there is. And they are ready now.
There's a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when you realize the thing that has been hurting you isn't even a thing. It's a way of seeing, a lens, a familiar distortion you inherited without knowing. It's the pattern that says, if you suffer, you'll earn love. If you bend enough, they'll stay. If you disappear a little, it won't hurt as much. And you've lived there. You've sat at that altar offering your silence as a peace treaty. You've smiled through rooms that made your soul shrink. You've said, "I'm fine," so many times the words have lost all meaning. But in that quiet moment, the one where something in you refuses to keep folding, you see it. Not everyone feels loved the same way. Some people feel it through control. Some only know it through chaos. Some call it love, but really it's fear, dressed up in need, masked as devotion. And you mistook intensity for intimacy. You confused urgency with care. You thought pain meant importance. That's not your fault. It's just what you learned. But now, you're unlearning. Not all at once, not loudly, but steadily. You're learning that real love doesn't demand your vanishing. That peace shouldn't feel like punishment. That calm isn't boredom, it's safety. And suddenly, you notice the people who speak softly, who wait for you to finish, who don't flinch when you cry, who stay. You didn't know how much noise you carried until you stood in someone's quiet. You didn't know how guarded you were until someone saw through it and didn't run. You didn't know how tired you were until you didn't have to perform anymore. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And here's the truth. You've been calling patterns people, calling trauma love, calling survival happiness. But now you see the difference. You're not angry anymore, not in the same way. You're just done. Done explaining your worth, done begging for reciprocity, done bleeding in places that never deserved your heart. What you want now is quieter, more honest, less performance, more presence. Not the grand gestures, but the ones that whisper, "I see you. You're safe here." And you're learning to offer that same love to yourself, to meet your own eyes in the mirror and not flinch, to stop apologizing for the things that made you survive. Because survival isn't shameful, it's sacred. Every scar, every silence, every step you took in the dark, they led you here. Here, where your worth doesn't shrink to fit someone else's comfort, where your voice doesn't echo in a void, where your presence isn't too much, but just enough. You are not broken. You are not needy. You are not too sensitive. You are remembering. And as you remember, you release. Not with bitterness, but with clarity. Not to hurt them, but to heal you. Not to forget, but to forgive yourself, most of all. You deserved better, but now you are becoming it.
You didn't become who you are by accident. Every silence you endured, every moment you swallowed your truth, every room where you felt invisible, those were initiations. No one tells you this. No one tells you that your loneliness was sacred, that the times you felt unseen were moments of spiritual exposure, invitations to see yourself more clearly. You thought something was wrong with you. You thought you were too intense, too sensitive, too strange. But you weren't. You were just awake, in a world that profits from people staying numb. They told you to stop overthinking, but overthinking was your way of surviving. They told you to relax, but your nervous system had memorized chaos. They told you to stop being so emotional, but your emotions were signals, flashes from your soul trying to be heard over the noise. And so you spent years trying to unbecome yourself, to get smaller, quieter, easier to digest. But somewhere in that ache, you began to question, what if the things they told me were wrong with me were actually what made me whole? Carl Jung didn't speak to the masses. He spoke to the soul, to the part of you that aches without explanation, that longs without language, that remembers a deeper truth. And if you're here now, still listening, still breathing, it means that truth hasn't died. You've tried to distract yourself, to find meaning in things that don't fit you. But something inside you refuses to go back to sleep, because you were never meant to stay in the shallow. You were meant to go deep, into the hidden, into the shadow, into yourself. Most people avoid their pain. You faced it. Most numb out. You stayed awake. Most forget who they are. You remembered. And now you carry something rare. Not just knowledge, but wisdom. Not just stories, but scars that speak. Not just opinions, but insight born from surviving. You are no longer looking for a place to belong. You are becoming the place. You are no longer asking permission to be yourself. You are claiming yourself. And the world doesn't know what to do with someone who refuses to lie. But here's the secret. You're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to be aligned with what's true. That's why the noise doesn't satisfy you anymore. That's why you crave stillness. That's why the small talk leaves you empty. That's why you stopped begging to be chosen. Because you finally realized you were never the one lost. You were just surrounded by people too afraid to find themselves. So now, you walk differently. You speak from your center. You stop explaining yourself to those who've already decided to misunderstand you. You forgive yourself. You honor the path. You choose peace. Not the fake kind that demands silence, but the real kind that comes when your soul is in alignment. You've become the answer you were searching for. And now, it's time to rise. To remember what you came here for. To no longer apologize for your depth. To no longer shrink for comfort. The world doesn't need another imitation. It needs your truth. And if this voice reached you, if it stirred something real in you, then know this: you were never alone in your ache. You were never broken. You were only being carved for something greater, for something true. And if you're still here, then maybe this was the sign you didn't know you needed. So take a breath. Feel that. That's the sound of remembering who you are. And if this resonated, if something in your chest whispered, "This is me," then don't let it end here. This space was made for you, and it only exists because of you. Subscribe, not just for another video, but because this is more than content. It's your mirror, your map, your echo. And if you're ready to keep walking, we'll walk with you. Welcome home.